Bodog Poll Question today. What are you angriest about this season? Blown leads, third period efforts, other, and we've had plenty of people voting other and giving us their 2 cents. Cast your vote at Sekeres and Price on Twitter. Bodog, make a play, Canada's choice for free casino games, sports odds, poker strategies, and World Cup fever about to hit. I know hearts and throats this weekend when Fonzie limped off the pitch. They say he's going to be okay to play in Qatar. Canada to get out of the group, just to get out of the group, pays plus 250 on your Bodog line of the day. And we'll have some great fun watching the footy later this month, much like we had great fun watching the football last night at BC Place. And Jeff Paterson was one of the 30,000 plus who took it all in. Hi, Jeff. How goes?
Yeah, doing all right, guys. Thoroughly enjoyed my time at BC Place. I remarked on Twitter, I know that it has a massive price tag and it's too big most days of the year, but on days like yesterday, it's an incredible facility. Like it really is, especially with the rain that was coming down that turned to snow, the comfort. Yeah, it was a little chilly in there, but to see 30,000 plus, the energy, and it reminded me too, just how little playoff hockey or football or soccer, all due respect to the Vancouver Canadians and the Vancouver Giants, they're on a smaller scale. I'm talking about just, getting those thousands and thousands of people into the same room and all having a singular goal and cause and reason to be there. And love the energy. And good on the Lions. They put on a show, start to finish, got the job done. They're going to be a tough going to Winnipeg, but I would say them getting a home date and winning a home date really checks off just about every conceivable box for this team from the outset of this season. They're a likable group, led by a star quarterback, but they've got a lot of other pieces on that team that I think people here will rally around if they can build off this for next year and beyond. So, yeah, ton of fun yesterday afternoon, and good on the BC Lions.
My segue to the Canucks then, Jeff, is the owner's box, Amar Doman, so excited, so satisfied, I think, with just what you said. Okay, somewhat mission accomplished. You don't want to say that, spike the football, we're done here after winning one game. But I think Amar Doman was proud of what had been accomplished on and off the field. I'm sure you cannot say the same thing in the owner's box at Rogers Arena. And you just, oh God, I would love a penny for the thoughts of pretty much everybody from the head coach on up at this point, Jeff, after finding yet another new way to lose a hockey game.
True, and you'd know better than I would, but does anybody sit in the owner's box at Whitecaps games? That's a question for another day, I suppose. But I think the same sort of things can be sort of extrapolated that, yes, the city is on board with the owner and all that he's done to reinvigorate the BC Lions. The Whitecaps and certainly the Canucks feel like they need a fresh coat of paint. And, the Canucks had it on a platter there the other night on Saturday night, up 3-0, a chance to go out on the road with 4 victories in 5 games. It kind of felt like, base camp. Yes, they still have a huge climb ahead of them to get to the playoffs, but it felt like with 4 wins in 5 that they could have had some stability and honestly some confidence heading out on the road. And I know 3-1-1 isn't a whole lot different, but there is nobody in that Canuck organization that can feel good about the way things shook down, the way the lead got away from them on Saturday night. And it's just incredible, guys. 8 of their 12 games, they have built multi-goal leads and have 3 wins to show for it in their first dozen. So we've seen this play out just way too many times. They should have more points. They should be better than they are. But, hey, it's a 60-minute game, and the other team gets a say in things, and they just continue to invite other teams back into hockey games and just don't have this killer instinct.
We know you cover, you don't cheer, but what do you think fans should be most upset about this year? Variation on our Bodog poll question.
Yeah, the blown leads. It has to be. And the thing about blown leads is, you have to have done some good things to get them. It's not an easy league to get up multiple goals. So this isn't me just carving them start to finish. They have done some good things. Their best players on a lot of nights have shown up. They certainly show up on the score sheet. But the problem there is that there are 2 ends of the ice, and we know that the penalty kill. And again, the bar is so low now that the guys after the game the other night were, trying to sort of pat themselves on the back for a penalty kill that went 4 for 5. Yeah, but you also gave up another. They played 12 games. The game in Columbus is the only game that they've been perfect on the penalty kill this season. And so this low bar of accomplishments and trying to tell themselves that, hey, it wasn't all bad. They got a single point. No, you had a 3-0 lead. And at the end of the season, guess who you're probably going to be battling with? Teams like the Nashville Predators. Preds got the 8th and final playoff spot last year. Canucks were trying to track them down late in the season. And so that should have been 2 for the Canucks and none for the Preds. Instead, it winds up being 2 points for Nashville and, yeah, a single for the Vancouver Canucks. But that's a massive swing that, when all is said and done, could easily come back to bite them. So I think it has to be these blown leads because they keep talking about learning tough lessons. When? When are we going to see that they've learned anything? This is 8 games now that they've had a lead, and only 3 of those have they been able to pull it out. And even in the ones that they won, like Anaheim the other night, they invited the Ducks back into that hockey game. Like, it certainly wasn't pretty. 12 games in, 1 complete effort, and that was the 5-1 victory over the Pittsburgh Penguins.
How worried are you about Thatcher Demko?
Yeah, look, he'll get better. He has to get better. It can't stay like this, but it is mind-blowing. And there are so many things, and the blown lead statistic is mind-blowing. But 12 games in, he's started 9 of them. He's sitting on 1 victory. Like, how can that possibly make any sense to anybody? And yet, that's the reality of where they are in all of this, that Spencer Martin has twice as many wins as Thatcher Demko at this stage. And so, yeah, I'm worried about him. You know, we keep saying, like, oh, but the goals themselves, like, look at them individually. No, at some point, like, that ship has to sail. And, yeah, UC Saros let in some bad ones. I mean, that Mikheyev goal to open, it was just moldy. Like, you need a save there for the Nashville Predators. And then the big rebound, and all of a sudden it's 2-0. But guess what? Then he went into lockdown mode, and we just haven't seen anything remotely resembling lockdown mode from Thatcher Demko for maybe more than a period. I think there have been a couple of decent periods along the way, but again, a 60-minute effort. So, yeah, I'm concerned. And Saros is a great example that it's not how you start, it is how you finish. And he became unbeatable, and ultimately his team won, and the Canucks were left wanting and wondering yet again on Saturday night.
I don't know that there's a lot of optimists left in Canuck Nation right now, but those that are remaining want a more substantial sample size before they make any judgments. Might want to look at the schedule. 8 of the next 10 on the road. The only 2 home games they have are against a pretty decent Kings team and the division-leading Vegas Golden Knights. Needless to say, this road trip is huge, but really this 10-game swath, which takes you to 22 games on the season. I mean, there's no denying where you are at the 22-game mark, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's a massive 10-game spot here for the Vancouver Canucks.
Right, and just rewind to last year, it was the 25-game mark when they decided to blow everything up. I don't think they're going to do that again, but blowing up may take on a different look in terms of the roster this time around. And I thought it was fascinating on Saturday night, Bruce Boudreau, and again, like he came in, most things went his way last year, was a jovial, happy guy. We just don't see that. Like, you can see that he's feeling it. He's frustrated. He kind of feels like he's out of answers, gets asked all the same questions. Talked about this team being afraid to win. I kind of pushed back and said, but you guys did so much winning, Bruce. Like, why are they afraid to win? And he said, well, maybe that's not the right term. But then he himself, without prompting, referenced what's coming after the road trip. And to your point, Blake, it's not just LA and Colorado. Then they're out on the road to Vegas and Colorado, and I think San Jose as well. So they can't be looking past Ottawa tomorrow night, but I thought it was interesting that the coach knows what's coming and sort of framed it more in this, you're right, like a tough 5-game road trip, but it's not just a 5-game road trip. Beyond that, there is danger. And look, when you're buried in the standings the way they are, there's danger lurking around every corner for the Vancouver Canucks. So one at a time here. Ottawa's lost 5 in a row. Montreal's not a whole lot better. They're without Josh Anderson. He got suspended. Toronto's down to its 3rd and 4th string goaltenders, even though the Leafs had a nice weekend. You know, the trip gets tougher the deeper it goes with Boston and Buffalo, and strange in the way that it's formulated in back-to-backs to start Tuesday, Wednesday, and then again on Saturday, Sunday. So I think this game in Ottawa, to me, is fascinating for a number of reasons, and I kind of feel like it's a referendum on almost all 3 positions for the Vancouver Canucks. Brock Besser skating on a top line with JT Miller and Tanner Pearson at practice in Ottawa sounds like he's going to be good to go. If Besser plays, though, he has to be activated off IR, and so there's going to be a decision to make. They've got 23 on the roster, and they've got all these bodies. Somebody is either coming home from the road, getting sent to the farm, or they're going to have to make some sort of deal. And it looked like Nils Höglander, who went from one of the top lines the other night to the press box again. Like, it's just this yo-yo for Nils Höglander. Then on defense, I think we all thought for sure, in the light of day, first practice out on the road, Riley Stillman would be one of the odd guys out. And there he is, yet again, one of their top six, and Rathbone and Burroughs. And I asked Bruce after the game, like, do you have decisions to make? And he kind of skirted around that one as well. But if Riley Stillman plays, guys, I think that tells you all you need to know about the long-term plans of both Rathbone and Burroughs. How can it not? If they continue to come back to this guy, the underlying numbers are brutal. He's been outscored by 3-1 margin at even strength. It's just time. I'm not running him out of the league, but he doesn't need to play every night. They've got options. And then finally, if they think that Spencer Martin is their best option to deliver wins in the here and now on a 5-game road trip, if he gets the start, I'd have to think they split the back-to-backs. But what does it tell you if they go to Spencer Martin this early in the season? So I think tomorrow's lineup against the Senators is going to be fascinating on a number of levels.
It's so disappointing that the young players are already getting eschewed, and I shouldn't even say young players. It's just, is Bruce Boudreau just going with his guys that he thinks works best for him and Riley Stillman, despite what logic would tell you that you need to make a change there on the blue line? It's the most frustrating part, I think, for a Canuck fan, is a lack of an accountability when there is an option that is so clearly there. And hey, nobody's saying that Jack Rathbone's a Norris Trophy winner yet here and ready to step in, but we know there's not much separating any of these players. Why wouldn't you make a change? And the fact that he's not is gonna sit poorly with a lot of Canuck Nation.
Yep, absolutely. And when you've got those options, it just and you're not winning hockey games. We saw earlier when they did win, Bruce was willing to make changes. So if you're not winning, why would you stick with this lineup? Like the play that Stillman makes on that 3-3 goal, that's not an NHL play. And then moments later, delayed offside, he's got the puck on his stick. Everybody is sort of regrouping and getting ready for the Canucks to break out. And he just winds up and fires at the length of the ice. He iced the puck on a delayed offside. Again, mind-boggling. And then had one more shift. He didn't play the final 10 minutes. And, of course, he's not going to play overtime. So they finally, even the coaching staff had seen enough. But that seemed like another clue that, okay, they've seen enough. He's coming out of the lineup. And look, if you look at the underlying numbers, Jack Rathbone hasn't been a whole lot better than Riley Stillman. But it's about giving opportunities and equal opportunities. And a young guy like Rathbone represents upside and sort of the future. Stillman looked like a throw-in despite the Canucks' objections to that. They felt that he could be a depth defender. And maybe he can be a depth defender. And then, of course, Kyle Burroughs, poor old Kyle Burroughs, is the lost man in all of this. And I don't know where he fits. But it was funny. And the Canucks aren't losing games because their defensemen aren't scoring goals. But I do think that, again, it illustrates just the composition of this group and this collection of defensemen. Jordan Gross. Anybody heard of Jordan Gross before Saturday night? I hadn't. And he scores twice, which is one more goal than the Canucks have from the defensemen all season. Guess who's got the one? Kyle Burroughs in Philadelphia in game number 2. So the group that the Canucks are icing right now does not have a goal from its defensemen. And with Jordan Gross scoring twice the other night, other teams have 9 goals from defensemen against the Vancouver Canucks this season. And the Canucks have 1, and he sits out on a nightly basis here.
We will know the Vancouver Canucks have turned the corner when we stop talking about goals and production from the defense. Guys, it's been like a decade-long conversation between the three of us on points from the defense, goals from the defense, or lack thereof. With these Vancouver Canucks.
I mean, Hughes is third in the league in assists from defensemen, but he made a point of trying to score more, and he's not doing that right now, and nobody else is.
Well, and yeah, so they have one defenseman who can score a little bit.
And look, that's what I said. They're not losing these games because defensemen aren't scoring.
No.
They're scoring enough goals. They're giving up 4 per. That's the big issue in all of this, is that they have given up 48 goals in the 12 games that they have played, and I know they only gave up 3 the other night, and then Nashville, the shootout goal doesn't count, obviously, but still, giving up 3, they scored 3 at home. Like, that should be enough, especially 3, the way they dominated that first period. Like, Nashville didn't look like it belonged on the ice, and yet the Canucks they completely ignore the warning signs. And I guess this is my trouble, in part, going back to your poll question about these blown leads. And it's crazy to say, guys, but it almost feels like there's an arrogance to this 3-win team that it feels everything's fine. It's 3-1. You're going to the third period. They get a floater from the point. Like, right then, you've still got the lead at 3-2. That should snap this team to attention. And it kind of feels like an arrogance, like that meme about like everything's fine, as everything's burning around them, and they don't change the way they play. They just continue to do their thing, and it blows up in their face yet again. And so they can talk about learning tough lessons. I need to see that some of these lessons have been learned, and a dozen games in, I see no evidence.
The body language is exactly what you say. It's a casualness that leads you to believe they have been there and done that when they have not. It's very strange.
Well, unfortunately, they have been there and done that, just not the right.
Right.
Done there,
not
been there and done that.
The right that, yes.
Right. What does JT Miller back at center tell you?
Well, this is interesting to me because if you scratch through the fact that he's on a 6-game point streak and he scored a nice rebound goal the other night and 7 goals on the season, he doesn't have an even strength assist. So he's now your number one center. They like that moving to the wing kind of got him involved and engaged in these games, and now all of a sudden it's just moving the deck chairs around again. We talked about Höglander, who was on the line with Horvat and Miller the other night. Now he's coming out of the lineup entirely, and I thought Höglander played okay the other night. I didn't have an issue with him, but the fact that they're going back to this 3-headed monster down the middle, well, guess what? JT Miller at center, fine, whatever. I mean, we've seen that he can produce there. Tanner Pearson, and when we talk about rearranging the deck chairs, Tanner Pearson now gets elevated back into the top 6. He had the 1 goal on the season, and Brock Besser's still looking for his first. So now you've got JT Miller in the middle on a line. The wingers have 1 goal combined. And I know Besser's only played 6 of the 12 games, but my goodness, like at some point it has to start for Brock Besser. I guess it has to start by getting in the lineup, but it underscores sort of how flawed this lineup is, that if you needed to jumpstart JT Miller on the wing, then you don't have enough depth at center. Now you got to move back to having it stacked down the middle, but then you're getting guys with 1 or no goals that are playing in your top 6, and that's a difficult way to ultimately have team success. So, as I said, Ottawa's there for the taking. The Senators are not a good team. They've lost 5 straight. I think there are points to be had on this road trip, but guess what? Like, all these other teams see the Canucks coming and think that they're get-well card for all that ails them as well. Like, the Canucks are in no position to take anybody lightly. I don't imagine that they are taking the Senators lightly, but I can't sit here and tell you that the Canucks are this wild favorite to go into Ottawa and then storm Montreal and come out with a couple of wins. They have to, because the trip gets tougher the deeper it goes. But I think there are some points to be had on this road trip, but again, they just don't get the benefit of the doubt without getting out there and showing me that they can get the job done.
The oddity of this road trip is if the worst does play out Tuesday, Wednesday, Jeff, they're in Toronto for 3 days with the national media looking upon them. Boudreau's hometown, we all know he gets a little pep in his step when he goes back to Toronto. There could be tombs written on the Vancouver Canucks Thursday through Saturday in Toronto if things go poorly in Ottawa and Montreal.
Yes, well, Daniel and Henrik have ridden to the rescue of this franchise several times. Maybe you trot them out in advance of Hall of Fame weekend and get Roberto there in tow and take a couple for the team here. They will be the stories, obviously, but you're right. There's enough traveling media on this trip. There's nowhere to hide into Montreal and then a couple of days in Toronto, as you said. So, nothing comes easily for this organization right now. And you get what you earn in pro sports, and they just haven't earned enough yet. So that's why I say give them an opportunity. But, they didn't look great against Anaheim the other night, even though they scored 8 goals. They didn't look great against Nashville for the full 60 minutes, even in the win in Seattle. They got outshot by a 2-1 margin in the third period. So, the times that they've won or picked up points, that's where I keep this Pittsburgh game stands alone as the rose among thorns, because they did look good and they did a lot of good things. But why they can't emulate that and replicate that more than once every – if you do it once every 12 games, that ain't going to get you where you want to go at season's end. That much I'm sure of.
Yeah, it would be a stroke of brilliance, Players aren't available today. Coach isn't available, but our Hall of Famers are. Here's Daniel and Henrik, Toronto media.
Yeah, it makes the split all the more important at the very least.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Jeff, marvelous stuff. Thank you for this. We will catch up Wednesday, my friend.
Sounds good.